So here I am on a big lake fishing an inline running lead with a mono hair in silt at range. Surely that can't work. Well, it works great. Let's find out how. So this is my long range silt setup. That's 15-pound armour line in 0.35, and I've just tied a big loop on the end of it. So pretty much it looks like it would do for a solid PVA bag setup. So to make the inline leads quickly interchangeable, so we've got a 3.5 ounce inline distance, and I've taken out the plastic insert and I've replaced it with a dedicated inline lead insert. This is important, this bit, because I'm trying to smack this lead as hard as a 9 foot 3.5 pound rod will go, and if I use the tail rubber to do this that comes supplied with these leads, I've found that they pull into the lead too hard. But these inline lead inserts, they've got a little step on them, and by using that it won't pull in too far, so it just stops it getting overdriven on the cast. And then I've got a little ring swivel on there, that works great. Ready-made solid bag leader, you can make these up, but this is just a 30cm long leader. The setup when I arrive is very simple. I just take the looper mono and I loop the whole lot through. This is why we've got a nice big, easy to work with looper mono, and I've just tied that with a non-slip mono loop knot, and then we loop to loop on the end. Now you might hate the fact that that looks all kind of tangled and bongly, but it really doesn't bother me in the slightest. It's good, strong stuff. And that's very quickly on arrival. It takes me 3 seconds to loop on an inline lead system to the rod. You know what you don't want to do, you don't want to be having a lead on the rod banging around ruining your carbon. A little setup like this just makes it quick and easy to interchange leads. It's the same setup that I'd use for solid PVA bag fishing. I'm not solid PVA bag fishing, but it works. There's a very specific reason why I've chosen 0.35 mono for this job. I'm trying to cast a 3.5 ounce lead a long way into silt, and I need a really strong material to do that. So this non-slip loop knot there, I've tested that to 14-pound breaking strain, so that's 95% of the rated strain. It's easy to do this knot too weakly. It can break at a few pound of force if you do a rubbish knot, but take your time, do it well, and it's a very strong material for that knot. Because it's only 0.35, that knot and this knot is really slim, and when you're fishing an inline lead, it's very important that the inline lead will just fly over those two knots. If I was to try and use an inline with a thick 0.50 mono leader, this knot would be too big, this knot would be too big, and this rig could become dangerous. So we don't want that. We want the inline lead to fly over those knots in the event of a mainline failure, which will mean that the rig is perfectly safe. At the business end of this rig, we've got a very simple mono hair rig. So these mono rigs are tied with 0.45 armour line. Yeah, they're thicker than the 0.35 main line and they're stronger than the 0.35 main line, but I need this for tangle resistance. I can get away with the thinner main line because the inline makes it safe because it's going to pass over the knots, but I must have the anti-tangle resistance, and I achieve that not through fancy materials. I just use thicker mono. Thicker mono is all you need if you want anti-tangle resistance. So I've just used a blowback tube to act as a bit of a kicker for the hair. I could use a float stop, a hook bead, it doesn't matter. You could use a piece of rig tubing, anything will do. But that helps to control the exit point of the mono. I'm not bothered in the slightest that we've got a kink in this loop here, because I'm going to put the bait over the top of that knot. So to connect the hook link to the swivel, I've used the half blood knot, just a 3-turn, because I find that that cinches up really tight. And I get a pivot here. I've got no anti-tangle tube, there's no sinkers, it's totally aerodynamic, and when this flies out, the hook link is going to fold back like that with the drag of the lead's going to fly out forwards like that, and it just works great. I've done quite a few casts with this setup now, never had a tangle once, so I've got absolute confidence in it. So this is the life system from CC Moore. This bait's been around a long time. One of the differences I'm finding on the new baits, they're much softer actually, and that's good because they're going to release all the attractors quickly out into the water. But as a hook bait, I need something more robust than that, because I'm fishing a big public park lake. There are poissons chat, there are crayfish. I need something harder and more robust to use as a hook bait. So the hook bait that I've chosen to use for these sessions, it's a pre-glugged dumbbell, 15 by 18, and smells absolutely amazing. And what I'm just going to do, just going to towel that off just a little bit. Now, because I'm going to be casting this basically as far as it will fly, I'm going to mount it lengthways. Most people probably mount dumbbells lengthways anyway. You can mount them crossways, and that's okay for short to medium range, but they're more aerodynamic to mount this way. Now, these are nice tough little baits. These they're designed simply as a hook bait. That's ready to cast out. Just tie that rig onto a lead system and that's going to catch me a carp. I could use it like this, but to make it even more attractive, I'm just going to roll it in a little bit of booster powder. It's just to get as much attraction as possible. So I'm casting these rigs out a long way. No PVA, no PVA mesh, no other attraction, and I'm expecting that little bait to catch me a carp in a big 70-acre lake. So there's an awful lot of water to go at, and I need this to be mega attractive. So these dumbbells come in two sizes. This is the 15 by 18, which is a good match for the size 6 chod twister that I'm using. So this is the booster powder, and it's certainly not just kind of boily crumb. It's very different to that. It's got a real kind of fine sandy texture, smells absolutely amazing. And because this pre-glugged bait has got a little bit of tack to it, I can simply roll it in the booster powder, and there we go, that's ready to cast out. It's just a way of making it mega attractive without adding the drag of a PVA mesh or anything like that. So to keep this nice and clean and safe for travel into the lake, I'm just going to fold that into a little plastic tub here, and when I get to the lake I can just tie those on directly. Just going to save me a few minutes, get the rigs out a bit quicker, might nick that early morning bite just as the sun's coming up. The other option, of course, if you want to get a dry powder coating to any glugged hook bait, is that you can just get some salt. This is, you know, pink Himalayan, but you don't have to use this stuff. Any sea salt will do. I wouldn't use kind of table salt, that sort of thing, because I don't like the thought of, you know, caking agents being in there. But I've used that before as well. Super attractive, just a salt dusting on a glug hook bait. So yeah, that's absolutely an option. If you do want to use a salt dip, the one thing that I would do, especially if you want to pre-do it before the night before a session, if you do get any salt on the hook, wipe that off, because salt is very corrosive. That's an unsharpened hook straight out of the packet, but you're still trusting that the coating is going to keep that rust free and razor sharp, so just wiping off the salt is a good idea. So that's it, mega simple, bit of mono, inline running lead, glugged bait, and I've just been punching this out as far as I can with a 9-foot rod. I know I'm firing it into silt, I can't feel the donk, not for love nor money. I'm fishing in 2 meters of water and it's working. I got 3 bites on this yesterday. It's an absolute myth that you need anything more complicated than a simple inline running lead to catch carp successfully in silt, even when it's soft silt, even when it's long range. I have to feather it, I have to stop that lead in flight, I have to land the rig, but if you land that rig, even if you don't feel a donk, it will catch you a carp. As long as that hook is sharp, then it works. Oh, this is an absolute chunk, this. He's not my biggest from this water, but he is over the magic 40-pound mark. Well, I say over. He is 40. Now that's a chunk. Look at the width of that. All of these fish have come on the new bait as well, which is it's always good. You know, I was very confident in the bait when I chose it, but you know, still got to do the business, hasn't it? So that's as the rig came back. See, the hair's a bit spanned up here, but the dumbbell's still completely intact. The hook will be completely knackered. And then you can see the inline lead insert has just popped out of the lead there. It's converted from a lightly semi-fixed lead to a running lead almost instantly, as soon as he's picked it up. Absolute screaming take. Bonkers simple, at 10 inches long, phenomenally effective. If you're fishing in silt at range, a popular option is to use a solid PVA bag. And it's great, it works. As long as you can get your bag into position, it'll present neatly for you and you'll catch. But if it's wet and windy, then it's really tricky to do. So here I have a lead setup that you commonly use for fishing solid PVA bags. But I'm not using a bag. For attraction, I'm using a single, small, high attract hook bait. And that's going to pump out all the flavour I need. This means that I can fish at any range, in any weather, even in silt, and it will work. If you want to do this, you may need to adjust your casting style, because if you're using a solid PVA bag, when it impacts with the water will slow it down very quickly. It'll virtually come to a dead stop. And once it's stopped, that bag will simply fall through the water and land delicately on the silt. Now, if you do that with an aerodynamic lead and a small single hook bait, when it fires into the water at speed, it's likely that it's going to plug into the silt. And that's what we need to avoid, because if it's plugged deeply into the silt, we are never going to get a pickup. To stop the lead and rig disappearing into the muck, the trick I'm going to use is to feather and trap the lead. This effectively brings the lead to a complete stop in flight, and once it's stopped travelling forwards, it falls, lands on the water, and the elasticity of the line will pull it back towards you a little bit. Then it's going to land onto the silt. But because we've taken all of the forward speed out of the rig, it lands softly and gently. And if you can master that technique, even on a shallow lake, I guarantee that this presentation will work for you. Your rig is going to be perfectly presented. There's some other key decisions that I've made with this rig, and it's all about aerodynamics. So I've chosen a 3.5 ounce inline distance. 3.5 ounce lead, I can't really cast a lead bigger than that, not with a 3.5 pound test curve rod. So I'm limited in the power, but 3.5 goes very well. Everything is very, very streamlined. I don't need an anti-tangle sleeve here because I've got stiff mono. If I'm worried about that kink, I could have steamed that out, but it really doesn't matter. There's no sinker on there because a sinker would add a bit of drag as well. There's nothing complicated on the hook. I don't need a kicker. The other thing to note is the fact I've limited the length of the leader to be a 30 centimetre leader. Every centimetre of leader costs you distance. So if you're fishing short to medium range and you can use a metre of lead-free material like this, then great. But if you want maximum range, but you want an interchangeable setup like this, then use a short leader. And the way the lead system works is Carp picks up the rig and hits the weight of the lead. It holds enough to hook the fish, but then shake of the head, dunk, and he's off. Ever so easy. So it's a trick running lead system basically. Super light, semi-fixed, little bit of pressure just for a hook hold, dunk, there we go, and then we're off into a runner. And because this is being launched at speed into silt, this might plug a little bit, but that's okay. It's just going to add to the hooking force that it delivers. Once it's hooked the carp, job done, and it will lift up out the silt, and I'm getting good indication. I'm even getting indication on an 8-ounce roach that picked up this 20mm bait. Got a little twitch on the bobbin, and I knew that it was either a roach or a bream. Wind down, lifted into it, and yeah, if I was fishing a traditional semi-fixed rig, I wouldn't have known anything about that bite, and I'd have had a little silverfish on there for a few hours until I recast, which is not catching me a carp. Now, many anglers reach for a helicopter rig when fishing at range in silt, and they'll probably choose a pop-up. And I've done it myself, and yes, it can work. But over the years, the more I think about it, that approach doesn't really make sense to me. The silt is where the majority of the natural food lives. And the carp love to dig in it, they're used to digging it, so doesn't it make sense to fish in the silt rather than above it. Now of course, yes, you can use a bottom bait on a helicopter rig and fish at range. The problem is that a helicopter rig is still a semi-fixed presentation, and if you're fishing for tricky carp, then it's likely that the carp have learnt to deal with a semi-fixed rig, and you won't get much in the way of bite indication, and the worst case is that the carp are going to eject your rig. My solution is this: use an inline running lead with a hook length that's just stiff enough to remain tangle free even when it's being cast at absolute maximum range. It's quick, it's simple to set up, and uses a minimum amount of components. And as long as I stop the lead in flight and land the rig neatly on the water, I'm absolutely confident that I'm fishing and I'm going to get that bite. In 3-day sessions on this big French public lake, I've had 7 takes, I've landed 7 carp, 0 tangles, 0 hook pulls, and the best has been 40 pounds, which is magic. And it doesn't worry me in the slightest that this rig was probably plugging into the silt. One of the carp that I caught, his head was so stained with brown that, you know, I could see that he'd been sticking his nose in that silt right up to his gill plates, a good 6-inch down into the silt. Brown stained lips, stained head. I've never seen the back of a carp's head actually stained up, but carp love silt and they will dig a long way to get their food. So all you need is a nice attractive bait and you'll catch them. Big old silt stained mouth, look. Look at that. I know that inline leads work great with supple braided rigs at short to medium range. I've been catching carp like that for years. But this time I really wanted to push inline leads to their limit. What can they do? And it turns out inlines are a great choice even at range, in situations where you wouldn't normally think that they can work. So here's how I've come up with this setup. The first thing you're going to need is an inline lead that's been optimized and designed for use at distance. This is not the place for a dumpy pair or a flat inline. You want something smooth, long, aerodynamic, something that's going to fly straight and true. In terms of lead size, you want to match lead size to the test curve of your rod. I'm using 3.5 pound 9-foot scopes, and a 3.5 ounce lead is a perfect match. If you've got 3 pound rods, then I would use a 3 ounce lead. That means that the system is in perfect balance. The waters I'm testing these rigs on are public and they're days only. This means I've got to rock up, get fishing quickly with no messing around. So to do that with inline leads, I want to put the lead on a short, solid PVA bag leader. By choosing a ready-made 30cm solid PVA bag leader, it means that they're quick to on-off the entire lead system. They're only 30 centimeters long. The longer the length of the leader that you're using, the more distance it's going to cost you. The leader isn't offering me anything in way of shock absorption. It's offering a little bit of flank protection for the fish, but it's principally there so I can quickly on and off the lead. For my main line, I've chosen to use 15 pound 0.35 armour line. The reason why I've chosen this material is I can achieve a really small, neat and strong knot. And I need a really strong knot because this knot is going to come under an awful lot of force when I hit it as hard as I can. I'm trying to smack this lead out into a headwind as far out into these big lakes as possible. And as a rule of thumb, if you take the test curve of your rod, in my case 3.5 pound, you'll need a knot strength of 400% of that, or 4 times that. 4 times 3.5 is 14 pounds. So I really need a very strong knot to do this. And of course, I'm not just guessing that I'm using 15 pound line, therefore my knots are going to be okay. Every single knot is tested so that it is capable of doing the job I need it to do. If it's not, I'm going to be cracking off, and that's dangerous. I've specifically chosen not to use a shock leader in this instance. And the reason why I'm not doing that is that if I was to use my standard 0.50 mono shock leader, it's going to result in a large diameter knot at the loop. This is a 0.50 mono leader, and I've just put a loop on it there, and I've just got a tiny little tag on there. But the problem is that tag can catch enough on an inline lead and cause it to hang up, and you don't want that. And bearing in mind, this is this is pristine, this is clean. Lakes are not clean, neither are rivers. You get a bit of muck in there and you could turn what should be a safe rig into an unsafe rig. So not loving that. I'm not going to use inline leads with 0.50 leader. That's a bad idea. It does pass with a bit of help, but I need this to work faultlessly. I don't want any glitches, any hint of a snag up. It needs to fly, and that is snagging. Not safe in my opinion. And if there's any algae, any weed, anything snags up on that knot, there's a risk that the rig can become dangerous. So I'd much rather just stick to a small, neat mainline knot. I can do away with a shock leader. No, I won't be able to cast as far as I could with thinner mainline and a shock leader, but I can still get this rig out 90 yards into a headwind, and I struggle to bait up with a thrown stick with 24mm baits much farther than 90 yards anyway. So it's really not much of a compromise in my fishing.